Joining me now from our bureau in Washington, D.C., constitutional attorney and Associate Deputy Attorney General under President Reagan, Bruce Fein. Bruce, I have a real problem. I have a real problem with the mayor of one of the major cities in the United States of America saying she's going to go out and arrest you if you happen to want to exercise your First Amendment rights.
Well, that is a severe problem under the Fourth Amendment, which prohibits unreasonable searches and seizures. It's an exercise of what you might call collective punishment because of the virus. There's no individualized examination of the risk of the individual sent back virtually under house arrest. Also, in many cases, you're basically violating the Contracts Clause of the Constitution. It forbids states from impairing the obligation of contract. And if you need to leave your home in order to fulfill a contractual obligation, employer, employer, otherwise, this prevents that from happening. So on both those counts, it seems to me what the Chicago mayor is doing is constitutionally flawed.
All right, Bruce, let's break this down a little bit. Let us count the constitutional violations of just the Bill of Rights and then one other amendment, the First Amendment. Of course, they're attacking your right to assemble, and then secondarily, your right to practice religion in a group. The Fourth Amendment, I want you to go back to that and explain that in just a second, but I would also throw in there the Fifth Amendment. There's no due process here. The Ninth Amendment, excuse me, does anybody even talk about the Ninth Amendment anymore? And the 14th Amendment, this is not equal protection. So when you talk about the Fourth Amendment, unreasonable search and seizure, how do you quantify that exactly? How is that a violation of the Fourth, what we're seeing here?
Well, typically, a seizure, a search to be justified requires that the target, so to speak, is a danger to criminal justice or is creating some kind of threat or menace to the community. And that's an individualized requirement. In fact, the American Revolution was triggered by British writs of assistance that abandoned individualized suspicion and enabled petty officials from the British to rummage through everybody's home and businesses looking for contraband goods, smuggled goods, or otherwise. That was a reason for the American Revolution, and that's why the Fourth Amendment says that in order to search or seize individuals, you have to have particularized reason to believe that they're creating some kind of danger and complicity in crime. These kind of orders have no individualized element whatsoever to anyone who is detained under house arrest, compromised in their ability to associate. So that's basically how the amendment works, and I don't think this comes close to satisfying the particularization requirement that the amendment requires.
Bruce, I got to ask you a philosophical question. There's a lot of constitutionally minded people in California, in Illinois, I believe, and even in New York that still exists somewhere in the corners of those states. Why has there been no action? Why has there been no court action to seek some sort of injunctive relief against the governors of California or New York, for example? What's going on there?
Well, you're trying to impute motives to a large spectrum of society, but I suspect a large reason is simply because the way in which the pandemic has been treated has created a great amount of fear, not based upon facts, on speculation. And what has happened is everyone, or at least a substantial number, feel they would be stigmatized, ostracized, if they attempted to bring a lawsuit. And I know, for example, and maybe the analogy is somewhat inexact, I spoke to Thomas Massie, the Republican congressman from Kentucky,
yes,
about there's a requirement in the Constitution that there be a quorum of members of Congress in order to have a vote on any substantive legislation. And in Article 1, Section 7 says you're supposed to have a recorded vote where the yeas and nays are identified to the individual members so that you can hold them accountable in the political campaigns. And yet he was ostracized, denounced, even by President Trump, who basically called him the worst member that he had ever encountered. And he clearly is ostracized by his fellow congressmen because he made them come back and do their constitutional duty. They had to show up, even though they evaded the requirement of having their votes recorded by having a voice vote. But I believe it's this general fear that creates an ostracism, a worry that causes many to remain silent or inactive.
It's too bad, because we need more voices standing up for the United States Constitution right here, right now. Bruce, thank you.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One American News on YouTube. And call your cable provider and kindly demand that One American News is added to your lineup. Call and subscribe today.